Looks like we are all good to go.
I think so.
Yeah. Hello to all you patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 368. Just making sure that all these are good. Canadian Patriot Podcast, the #1 live podcast in Canada, recording October 17th, 2022.
We need your help to support the Canadian Patriot Podcast. Visit patreon.com/CPP and become a Patreon. You can get a better quality version of the show for just $1 per episode. Show you're not a communist. Buy a CPP t-shirt, which is $24.99 plus shipping and theft. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com homepage and follow the link on the right.
Excellent. And now our favorite segment of the show, what are we drinking? And something that you've completed in the Patriot Challenge. And as is tradition, even if Andrew isn't here, Liz, what are you drinking and what have you done this week?
Okay, so I'm drinking a good big jug of coffee mixed with a lovely amount of Spice Box whiskey. I'm not slurring because I can't, because I've drank too much, I promise.
Yet. You're not slurring too much yet.
Yeah. Okay, so from the Patriot Challenge, I've definitely completed 45 minutes of exercise. Maybe not today, but 10 minutes of practicing a skill, definitely. Actually, 45 minutes of exercise for sure. We were hauling, my mom and I were hauling rail ties out of the garden. So we were moving
those
those
are
suckers.
not light.
No, fortunately I have like a 500 or 700 pound winch on my four-wheeler. So we use that too.
That makes it a little easier.
Yeah, it's a lot better. But we were still hauling quite a bit and burning shit and doing the things that a bunch of redneck ladies do. So I did some reading and a task to improve my life. Well, I was out in the garden.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It works.
It's I guess a task that improves my life. So
yeah,
there you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, and who shall I pass the baton? Pierre, what's going on, Pierre? What are you drinking?
Whiskey.
Mm.
As usual. Almost done breaking in my new boots for the ruckings. Finally wearing them around the house, trying to break them in so I don't get sore feet. Gotta start back on that, especially since it's not like 60 degrees out. Practiced a few skills. I was in Toronto last week, but I had spent copious amounts of time in a vehicle that I was just drained. But I had to do some chit-chatting with the upper management, so refinessed a little bit of my wording and picked up the lock picks again, trying to pick a few locks and practice a skill that may or may not come in handy one day.
Nice.
What about you, Gavin?
I am still on the water train and will be for a little bit. For those that have been paying attention the last few shows and so on, you've heard about my fun medical adventures. Still dealing with that. Everything seems to be back to normal except for the whole blood thinners thing that I just got told today will probably not be the 3 months and will be closer to 6 months. So fun times.
You know, you should just like rebrand and call it your sober October.
Yeah, except it's like a 6 month long October. Yeah,
we can come up with rhymes to further your cause
for every month. Yeah, so definitely getting all of my water. This is working on liter number 4 today.
Oh my.
Yeah,
nice.
I'm also like I know I talked about it a little bit before getting into the 75 hard, but I was kind of waiting to hear what my doctor had to say about being physical and all of that. So kind of had to push that back, and now I've kind of got the go ahead to do some of that stuff. So been trying to up my water intake in preparation for that, because 4 liters is a lot if you don't plan around that.
Yeah, especially all the bathroom breaks.
Yeah.
I missed the last little bit of what you said, because as soon as you said the let's get physical, all I could hear was Olivia Newton-John play in my head.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I didn't say anything interesting, don't worry. But yeah, as for Patriot Challenge, I guess, yeah, definitely crushing my water today and doing my reading. I am a half a month ahead of where I should be in my reading goals for the year. So
Nice.
I'm crushing it. So
How do you plan out your reading goals? I'm fascinated by this.
I try to aim for 4 books a month.
Okay, you're a bibliophile, sir.
Yeah, so I'm already done my allotted 4 books for the month, halfway through, and I just started today actually, Jordan Peterson's sequel, 12 More Rules for Life. So
Good for you.
Nice.
hopefully we'll finish that one before the end of this month. That one's a little bit longer than some of the other ones, but you know,
Nice.
I'm confident in meeting my goal of 4 books a month every month for the year. And I've actually gone over that already.
It's
If you
amazing.
include like the complete works of Conan the Barbarian was like 17 books or something like that, but I did the counting it as 1 book at least currently. So
Oh, wow.
we'll see. That was surprisingly not very good. I was a little disappointed with that one, to be honest, but
Oh,
that's okay.
this
But yeah, so for everyone else, grab the Patriot Challenge template from the website, post it to your social medias, tag your friends, definitely tag your enemies and or the government. But I repeat myself, do the things, better yourself. Or as our friend Tim that we used to be on the show would say, unshitty yourself.
that sounds a lot more like change your diaper or change your pants than anything.
Hey, that could be considered improving your situation and bettering your life.
Yeah.
I would say it does, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Am I still in the listener feedback slot?
Sure.
Yep.
Let's do it. Okay, so we'd love to hear your feedback about the show. We do try to, tap into that every chance we get. So visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback, or you can email the show at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. A version of the show is available on Stitcher and at iTunes. You can also see it posted on YouTube after live. And if you become a Patreon, then you can see a fancier version. Is that what's happening? You were talking about that earlier, Pierre. So there you go. Get in touch, people.
All right. The news.
Yeah, big news right now, eh?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Inquiry.
there's a few interesting things going on in the news, but I guess the biggest one that's probably the most exciting for all of us, yes, is the Emergencies Act inquiry that's happening right now in Ottawa.
Yeah.
I mean, I find the whole thing hilarious. We don't have a note in it because there was an article in the paper or whatever about Doug Ford and his stance on the thing. But given that it's super brief because the headline was half of the article, the piece of shit that is currently in charge of Ontario that used to be our guy but no longer is, continues to side with Trudeau and feels that the Emergencies Act was necessary.
But he also was the guy that really pushed the Provincial Emergency Act or State of Emergency. He really pushed that. I'm assuming you're talking about Ford.
Yeah.
He really pushed that, and he really sold himself on that too, right?
Yeah, I mean, he tried to give provincial pretty much, what was it, all police in Ontario, I think, specifically
all
OPP,
kinds of,
they were pretty much like, you can stop and frisk pretty much anybody, and even the OPP was like, no, we're good. Like,
there's a lot of,
we're not going to do that. Yeah,
that's actually the only reason that I haven't 100% lost faith in the cops. Like, don't get me wrong, when I see a police officer, I kind of twitch these days, but and that was never the case before. I never,
and that's the
I
thing.
definitely was civically minded, but because of because of the way the Ford behaved with the Emergency
Yeah.
Act.
Well, I mean, anything
It
to get more
really-
power, right? And keep it.
Yeah, and that was really petrifying. Like, you can imagine, like, at one point, folks, and this is something that I have conversations with some of my friends who, didn't really see the situation the same way. They were on the compliance train. They don't, I'm sure they've heard it, but they didn't really realize some of the situations that folks went through, and I'm like, yeah, you can imagine going grocery shopping and being afraid that you're going to get stopped and frisked. Like going to your grandma's house because you're the only person that can go to her house and getting stopped by the police and questioned. Like, how Guy Fawkes era could you get?
Taking your dog out for a walk,
Yeah.
or like if you happen to be lucky enough to have been considered essential and had to get to work, and you're walking because you would normally have taken the bus, but you didn't want to do that, and you happen to cut through a public park because that's the most convenient way, and now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, can't be in the park
Yep.
because that's where COVID lives or something stupid, right? Like all the nonsense.
I was still working for my family business. Well, we had sold it, but I was still working for that organization when COVID first came in, and we immediately had to issue, because they had this problem in the States and we had another location in California. We immediately had to issue letters of employment, indicating for people to carry around with them that, we're an essential service and that they have to get to work. So, and if the police had any questions, my phone number was on those sheets that, the police could call me and inquire.
Yeah, I didn't do many of them, but I had a few employees that lived further away.
Mhm.
And so we're a little bit more worried about that kind of stuff. So I had to write a few of those as well, just because it was like they didn't want the hassle, and just in case,
Yep.
But yeah, no,
I would go Quebec side for work because I do a bunch of stuff on the Quebec side. So yeah, I needed one because they were stopping. And that all came
Yeah.
about because they sent one person over and they didn't give him a letter, and he sat on the bridge for like 4 hours while they were trying to like scrounge everything up. So they said, here's the paperwork with a whole bunch of phone numbers saying you're it's essential travel.
Well, folks, we are
But-
coming up to November 5th, so it's very appropriate that we're talking about,
yes.
some of these.
Let us remember.
No,
Yes.
that's November 11th.
No,
Do
no.
you?
Remember.
Remember. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah,
what?
there's a lot of
Remembrance
remembering going
Day
on
is-
in November. Yeah.
Remembrance Day is the 11th here.
Yeah, no, but yeah, remember the 5th of November.
Yeah, it's true.
Get your
That's
mask.
actually it's the first what are they called? The band? No, whatever they're called. The neck masks that
Neck
people thought
warmers,
they could get away with for a while. The first one that my brother-in-law bought was a Guy Fawkes one.
Nice.
He's like,
Nice.
no, I'm wearing this.
If the threats are true from
Yep, Kieran.
Dr. Moore,
Kieran
that's
Moore.
definitely what I'm going to need to get, is a Guy Fawkes mask. But yes, gonna read from this article here, the first one anyways. The Ontario residents who lived through the convoy blockade in late January and February told the inquiry probing the invocation of the Emergencies Act that they felt terrified and that they had no escape from the blaring horns, diesel fumes, and fireworks pinging off their windows.
So I know that you were down there, Gavin,
Yeah.
and for a hot minute you were there, Pierre. But
Yep.
between myself and my parents, we were there 3 weeks out of the 4. So they went during the week and I was there on the weekends. And the diesel fuel, I can speak to that that was a little grotesque. I'm not gonna lie about that. That was a little challenging. I have not the greatest lungs, so I really struggled with some high def fumes, but that was really only in the tractor alley. But nobody was really honking.
Yeah.
Like not crazy. And I didn't recall any, especially in the residential areas, like the dance party that I was in was in front of like the chateau and
Yeah.
like it wasn't
Yeah.
it's not residential. So some
Yeah,
of the
it was-
side streets, like maybe the first weekend, people were like a little rowdy in terms of partying it up. But
Yeah.
But even that, like, I would say my experience is this, like, of all of the things they're complaining about, like, yes, I did hear people honking, but like,
Yeah,
once
sure.
it got to be evening time, like,
Yeah.
especially later in the evening, like, hey,
Yeah.
you should really be asleep. Everyone was very respectful. The only thing that was kind of crazy was in that same area in front of the chateau there
Yeah.
was the dance party, or like the one that was like
But that's not a
right in
residential
front.
area, right?
So
Like,
complaining about the diesel smell,
yeah.
the horns, or fireworks that I didn't see any, and I certainly
Mhm.
didn't see any pinging off of people's windows, because like that would have been ridiculous. Was
Yeah.
like if they had been like, man, the music was too loud. That would be the thing that I was like, oh yeah, that's
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would make sense to me.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And here's the thing that, you know, to this day, I just always challenge people to go back to this idea of, okay, have you been to a festival in Ottawa before? I'm sure plenty of them have lived through Pride, Canada Day, all the things.
Yeah.
There definitely
the
wasn't.
Queen's funeral when they
Yeah.
had like 3 howitzers firing for 16 minutes straight every 10 seconds.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
Somehow
but that's the point.
that didn't bother anyone.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's like if you were to take the politics and the emotions away from it, I don't think
Yeah.
people inherently would have a problem. The first weekend that I was there, and even the second weekend, I asked a bunch of local shopkeepers, and my parents did too. We asked a bunch of local shopkeepers, we're like, hey, how is this for you? And for the most part, they were like, this is a lot of business for us, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
And the only concern that they had, and it's very valid, they said it's challenging for us to replenish our inventory because trucks aren't coming down here. Trucks, aren't able to come in. And I was like, okay, that's a fair assessment, but none of them were like, you walked into their store and everybody was friendly because everybody at the convoy was friendly. The only experience I ever had of like not friendly was some drunk or hungover girl at 7 o'clock in the morning who I think was still drunk from the night before, standing in the middle of the intersection, cursing up a storm at all of these truckers who are like drinking coffee and doing their morning routine.
Yeah, all I mean, aside from the actual protest itself, and yes, I guess earlier on in the protest they were honking excessively.
Sure.
All of the problems that I heard really were from people that were not associated with it,
Yep.
right? And I mean, I personally didn't find the diesel fumes all that bad. Well, I guess when I was there, they weren't trying to run the trucks as much because they were starting to run out of gas. But like, I mean, if they were going to do this in the wintertime is the best time, because like there's a reason why you don't get smog alerts and stuff like that in the winter, because the cold keeps that all down. I mean, if this had been like August, and especially like this last summer where it's been like ungodly hot and humid all summer, it would have been 10 times worse.
Well, and to be fair, that I have some respiratory issues. So the expectation that I went into it was that, like, it's not going to be awesome if I'm standing amidst, like, because I mean, I was standing and I loved every minute of it, but I had a bit of a coughing fit after, is I was standing in the middle of like, 15 tractors, and they were all just like, running, but I loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
I just had a coughing fit after, no big deal.
Yeah. Then one of the people here was, I certainly during the experience had difficulty sleeping. I had an effect on my lungs and my throat because of the fumes and other smells, and I also have long-term effects, although they don't really say, or I guess here they are. The long-term effects are loss of hearing, loss of balance, some vertigo. I'm triggered by the sound of any horn now. I don't know how any of that stuff would.
Well, let me tell you
Loss
something.
of balance or vertigo, like loss of hearing, sure, but
by that standard, I'm triggered every time I see a police officer because I'm going to assume that they're going to unjustly arrest me and harass me.
But I
Okay,
mean, I
so-
don't see how any of those, like, other than the hearing thing, which, okay, if you were right next to the truck all day, you get some hearing
Sure.
loss potentially. That one I could see as somewhat legitimate. But as I said, I don't think they were, there was
So-
nowhere when I was there that was like blaring their horns all day.
I actually think that that's a trash statement because you go down into that city center where most things were, concentrated in the summer.
Yeah.
There is loud traffic.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
the bridge to Quebec is right there. All of this stuff. It is not any different. It's 100% just because of the politics and the emotions behind it. I had tons of people. Ooh, I had something just land on me. Don't mind me. I had tons of people just message me and say comments essentially indicating, oh, Liz, you must like really hate people pretty much. And I'm like,
Wow.
why? Because they had this really emotional response and this really interesting, concept of what was going on. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how many people's eyes are opened through this inquiry. But a lot of folks are not paying attention to it. So it's definitely not being, covered in the media as it should be. I watched a clip from the former RCMP guy, the head of security of the event.
Yeah.
And he said there's, I guess, a couple of links that they want people to put all of their film footage up to, and they're going to geolocate it. And the reason that they're going to do that is then they can use any video footage as rebuttals as folks, provide false
Yeah.
statement and false witness. So
And it's funny that after what Gavin just read, that the hearing loss, vertigo, and everything, the next paragraph says that that person has difficulty with their eyesight.
Yeah. So maybe they
I
just
mean-
have bad health in general, and it has absolutely nothing to do.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's what people have to remember. Like I just finished acknowledging and telling you guys that I had a pre-existing condition when I went in there and had, some coughing fits around the fumes. That's just
If
the
you had,
reality.
like, the
But you're fine
cleanest
now.
bill of health, going
Yeah.
into it, and now you're doing something. Okay, fine, but I mean, if you were already in poor health,
But like,
I
Honestly,
doubt that many of this.
you were there for a good chunk of it,
yeah,
and you were like, in it, not
Yeah.
just like living in the area. And yeah, you had some issues when you were there as well, but you're back to what your normal is.
yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
honestly,
And you
it
don't
was
have
just
vertigo or hearing
No.
loss or
no. And the only thing that I do have as a result of that is I have an obscene distrust of people in general, and specifically the police, though, and authority. And I really struggle with that because I grew up as a civic minded person. I wanted to get into
Yeah.
policing. I thought about military. When I
Yep.
was way too young, I tested for RCMP, like all of those things. And
Yeah.
so I was very civic minded. And, so it was very crushing for me because even after we were kettled and pushed off of Wellington Street there, the next night, well, no, it was 2 nights later, we kind of had to recoup, but it was a couple nights later, we walked by the area. We couldn't get into the red zone, obviously, but a regular city cop drove past, and honestly, it took everything in me not to hit the ground and put my hands above my head.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've never lived in a world where that's something that I've felt, or felt
Yeah.
like under what circumstances.
well, and so I mean,
Yeah.
reading some of the other things here, they described it as an occupation, that they were living in fear, and that oftentimes they were harassed for wearing a mask. I mean, when I was there, I saw quite a number of people in the protest wearing masks. I mean, the vast majority of people were not,
Yeah, sure.
but there were, I mean, enough people in the area that were that, and no one was saying anything. No,
Yeah, no, and that was 90% of this whole reason they went, was like to stop all these mandates. Like, if you want to wear
Yeah.
a mask, go for it.
Well,
It should be your choice.
yeah.
And whether I agree with your choice or not, but you have
Well,
the
they're-
right to that choice.
they're also
So-
claiming that they would blast their horns and smile. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, but how did they know that you like, you're just a regular person? Like, it's not like we all had like, our black SS uniforms because we were all white supremacists at the rally,
Yeah.
right? That you could easily point us out and go, oh, those are the protesters, and then these are the people that just live there. So like, I don't think they were doing that like specifically at that person maliciously, like you right there, you, this
Yeah.
one's for you. Like, no, that's not
Yeah.
happening. Yeah, it was about your freedom of choice, like your ability to like not be told you have to wear a mask, but if you want to wear one, wear one. If you want to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. It wasn't,
Yeah.
no one can do this. It was, leave us alone to make our own damn choice.
So it's interesting that you say that actually, because this is a perspective that I heard over the weekend, and I think that it's pretty accurate. So I think we have, you guys say that right now, and even I say that, I just want people to make their choice. But I will say that I look at people differently when they're walking around in a mask.
Sure.
Now, I try really hard not to, because I'm like, hey, that is what I'm fighting for, as much as I don't agree with you. Or I shouldn't say that. It's not that I don't agree with you. I don't see the value in your behavior. As much as I don't see that, I want you to make that choice. And
Yeah.
but that's a similar argument on the other side, because I was talking to a guy actually just the other day, and he said, I went through Victoria Park in London, and there was, I guess, an anti-vaccine protest just, a couple of weeks ago. And the guy, I guess, speaking was like, this isn't an anti-vax protest. This is a freedom rally, right?
Yeah.
But in those freedom rallies, what I think a lot of people have done the disservice of is that they really do criticize vaccinations and masking. And it's like, you should be criticizing the mandates. You don't have to agree with vaccines. You don't have to agree with masks. Personally, I think that they have no credibility given the nature of how they've been executed. I don't even care about the scientific value of them. I have no desire to go near them for the sheer reason of who's trying to tell me to do it. But some folks see the value in them, right? And being harassed by the freedom fighters or anti-vaxxers is just as damaging.
Oh, absolutely. It does.
Right.
It does the freedom movement a disservice because
huge.
Again, it's, and I agree. And like, for me, it was never, I mean, generally I am a believer in vaccines, ones that have been like tested and vetted and done this thorough research and all of the things.
Yeah.
Because they can be quite beneficial.
Yep.
Yeah.
This particular one, my biggest issue right off the bat was that we went from not knowing what COVID was because it didn't exist, at least not this particular variant of it,
sure,
to in less than a year, we have all of a sudden got a vaccine that is one that is in a way that we've never done before. And I was like, that doesn't like, that doesn't sound right. Like, and I wasn't against getting it at that point. I was in the, I'm going to wait and see how this goes camp, because, if at the time, like we were still getting a lot of news of like, oh my God, everyone's dying. And it wasn't like, wait a minute, there was a big uptick. And that was all of the people that are old and already like very close to death. Again, not that that's not tragic and sad, but they died a little bit ahead of when they should have in a big group. And then it kind of leveled off as everything happened. And I don't think that had anything to do with vaccines, because again, as we're hearing now, they don't actually stop transmission. And I don't think it had anything to do with masks, because I don't think they work all that well.
So that's the problem though, is that folks aren't hearing that information, whether they are being told that information or whether or not they just aren't listening to it are two very different things. But usually folks who are on the freedom side of things or anti-mandate side of things are usually still glued to the news, to the news flow. Whereas a lot of folks, in my opinion and experience, a lot of folks have been swept up by an emotional and a political sensationalism that faded out once the narrative fizzled, right? So
Yeah.
that sensationalism has not continued into the actual projection of truth. So, now that they're coming out with data that's saying, hey, this doesn't actually, like, it maybe is going to help with symptoms, it's maybe going to do some of this, whatever. Folks aren't hearing that. A lot of friends I know were just aghast to find out that up until this summer, people who were unvaccinated still couldn't get on a plane. Up until September, we technically couldn't leave the country or come back in without harassment. So,
But I mean, saying that we are the most vilified and
mhm.
harassed segment of the population is apparently bigoted and racist.
Oh,
Even though
you
it's
talk
true.
you talk to international authorities, they are aghast at how Canada has behaved.
Yeah.
Like, and that's alarming when you think about some of these other socialist countries that have, interesting social structures, but also, a little bit
Yeah.
authoritarian, right? And
When the leaders of some of the most destitute nations
yeah.
in the world speak out against your prime minister and what he's done, you're like, ooh.
Well, and you look at
Yeah.
places, a great example is places like India. They really, JT really did a disservice to himself and, his reputation, among many things. He's done it on a lot of levels, but when he really, spoke out against the farmers' protest in India, which is very similar in ideological process to what happened with the Freedom Convoy, what happened with the farmers' protest in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Same ideas, like obviously different processes. But
Yeah.
when JT spoke out against that, and then India was one of the few places that kind of got ahead of COVID because they were treating with ivermectin immediately, and then they were like, "Hey, bro, you hypocritical piece of trash."
He supported, or at least didn't speak ill against the other people that were protesting and blocking the rail lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And destroying equipment and still are. He also praised India for their, shutting down of certain things in protest like a year previous to all of this. And then now it's like, oh, you've shut down Ottawa and not even shut it down. You just made it inconvenient for people to go and visit the Parliament buildings and do that stuff. So really the only people that, in my opinion, were negatively impacted were the politicians, but they weren't sitting anyways. They were all doing it via the Zoom and things like that.
Absolutely.
And the businesses that had been struggling for 2 years at that point were actually getting a boost, because previously it was, man, I hope people come in to my business and spend money. And now they're like, the only problem we have is getting stuff in here because everything is selling out. And
yeah.
Well, I have a friend that lives in Ottawa, and I hadn't seen him in years, but somehow we got connected. I think it was because we were on the same Facebook freedom chat, and he has to be really careful because he works for some folks that would not take kindly. So unfortunately, he was one of those guys that kind of had to wear a mask during the protest or the Freedom Convoy. For security reasons, actually, because it couldn't be seen. But we were talking about it, and he's lived in Ottawa for a while. He's, participated in life there. And he said that the homeless thing was quite interesting because even just days after they shut down the food situation. So the last weekend in February is when we all got pushed off of Wellington, but we were there. That was the Saturday morning. We were there until like the Monday, I think, and Monday or Tuesday. And by like Monday or Tuesday, because by that time they'd probably stopped allowing food in for probably like 4 or 5 days, right? The big mass donations of food. we walked downtown a little bit later, and the big homeless shelter, soup kitchen, the lineup was again pretty big. And he said that wasn't the case during the protest, right? Because folks were fed, folks were taken care of. There was, they probably, if somebody was able to do the tracking of it, even though it was just a month long, you could probably see an increase in mental health stability among the homeless population. Because, there's folks that they could engage with and, do life
Okay.
with. It was kind of, they were on the same playing field, it's like, oh, hey, we're all out here together. We're all, doing this thing. And that's just an assumption on my part, but this inquiry is going to be pretty fascinating. And
I'm definitely agreeing with Chris though, and I think that the final statement has already been written. I think it was written before they even started the inquiry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that the inquiry is just placating the crowd, right? They couldn't not do something. The federal government has enough class action and constitutional lawsuits against them that they have to show that they're making a move, right? And even if that move is just pandering, it's obviously not reflective of actual change. And you got Kieran Moore, our provincial Ontario.
If you don't voluntarily do the thing, we're going to force you to do the thing. You're like, that's not how freedom works, bud.
And he's already talking, like he's already really promoting this idea of masking up again. And what is it? People are on their 5th shot, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but when they got rid of the whole mask thing and they were asking him, like, are you going to wear a mask? I mean, even he wasn't outright saying, yes, I will be wearing one. He kind of like beat around the bush about it and was like, well, when I'm in a situation where I'm in close proximity, I will do that. But it's like, so basically you're saying, no, you're not going to wear one.
Yeah.
Like, unless you have to, because optics, like, fuck you.
Yep.
Yeah, at least for the camera, right? At least for the picture, the photo ops.
Like all those ones where it's like all the politicians that are standing around talking without them on, and then all of a sudden they put them on for like the group photo op when they were all in Europe for that thing.
Yeah, but everybody else saw all those other photos of them just, being stupid.
Living life like normal, like nothing else.
But you also still see, and I hope that this, these legal proceedings that are going through, you got Brian Beckford putting one of the largest constitutional lawsuits against the government. That'll be interesting to see, but, I hope it really brings it home to the, average person, because places like University of Western Canada, Western Ontario, it's a pretty high ranked school, like I think internationally it's in the top 300 schools, and that seems like a lot, but it's a really good, it's a really good school. Their main campus requires 2 shots and a booster, so 3 shots to go to school. And their ethics professor got fired over speaking out against it. Now, I mean, the small campuses, because there's like Huron and Brusha and Kings and sub campuses, they don't have vaccination mandates, but a lot of people don't realize the impact that this has, like on their day to day or their person, just like a neighbor, their friends. So unaware.
I've been hiring for a few positions at work, and like, I don't care. It's none of my business. Like, I haven't asked anyone throughout this whole thing, and immediately, as soon as someone tries to talk to me about it, I'm like, I don't want to know. It's not my thing. Stop talking. Like, I pay for your insurance plan, and I'm not allowed to know who's on like taking what drugs. I think this qualifies as that as well. So like, if you're telling me as like an individual to an individual, sure. If you're telling me as an employee to a boss, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Not my business.
I'm going to be honest. There is way bigger diseases or vaccination statuses that I would rather actually know about Because then I'm
Yeah.
gonna be like wearing a fucking
But-
hazmat suit, pardon my language, around you for some of them, right? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
And I'm
100%.
like,
for real.
COVID is not a concern of mine, you
Yeah.
know? I'm like,
But-
we've had an AIDS crisis. You can't talk about that, honestly. Some of that
Yeah.
stuff has now been glorified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
But
the
yeah, I've
media.
had
So
people that like, as soon as I'm doing their interview, the first thing they say, well, I'm double back. I'm like, I don't care.
yeah.
Like, I just like, please don't tell me. I don't want to know. I don't care. It has no bearing on whether you get the job or not. Like,
It's pretty funny. Family friends of ours, they're Amish, and they're very against all this too, you know, and they won't even.
did they
this
even know
one-
that there was a pandemic?
Oh, so the cool thing about it though is because being Amish, they have some different privileges in terms of crossing the border.
Yeah.
They were at a wedding like every month pretty much in the summer in
Yeah.
Michigan, and I was like, good for you guys.
So what you're
Um,
saying is,
can
tell
I
everyone I'm
convert?
Amish.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, can I convert?
I probably have to
I've got
shave
the
the
beard.
mustache, but yeah.
Yeah, right. But he said that, you know, he wouldn't even buy from Tim Hortons anymore because they required vaccinations for those camps, for the kids camp.
Yeah.
You had to be vaccinated to go to that kids camp. So he was like, no,
Crazy.
I'm not even doing that. But he said to me, he's like, I had somebody post on Facebook a job posting that we have. They run a construction company. And he said, I just thought I would turn the tables. And he said, I posted on that job posting that you could not be vaccinated.
Yeah.
He's like, you're not allowed to be vaccinated. And he
Good.
said, because, you know, if they can pull that off, there's no reason why I can't.
Turnabout is fair play, right?
Yeah. And he said, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I got a lot of pushback, but he's like, I'd rather, you know, have people working for me that align their values
Oh.
with mine. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I personally don't think vaccination status is
No.
totally indicative of that, but I
Yeah.
do think that it is
But
an
if-
exception to the rule that somebody got vaccinated because they got duped. It's, you know, the rule for sure is, you know, that they're
Well, but
just followers, right?
Are we allowed to discriminate on vaccination status or not? And if we are, then it has to
Technically
work.
you are.
If we are, then it has to work both ways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
technically you are.
I don't know how you would prove that you're not, because you just don't show them your papers, but that's besides the point. But
Yeah.
in theory, if you are for the discrimination based on that criteria, you have to be for it in both directions. Otherwise, you're a hypocrite.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know,
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. I'm interested to see how this you know, whole inquiry turns out anyway. So
yeah, I think some interesting things, at least for the people that pay attention, will come to light, and then for the average person, they won't notice anything.
yeah.
But you know, so such is life. Leaked report shows Ontario hospital wait times increase about 54% in a year.
I have heard that. We have a local, well, not local, but if you're local to Southwestern Ontario, there is a Instagram account where a nurse essentially doxes like every hospital
Wow.
for poor practice, but also wait times up by like Chesley area. So by the Bruce Peninsula, their entire emergency department is getting shut down till the beginning of December.
Yeah, when I
Yeah.
was at the hospital today, they had a thing saying that their urgent care center was shut down.
Yep.
So, I mean, go figure, you fire 20% of the staff
Mhm.
and don't bring them back, and now all of a sudden there is an increase in SADs and
Yeah.
all kinds of other things like,
Well, so you were talking about this a little bit earlier, you know, about this increase in elderly people, you know,
Yeah.
fatality type stuff. But the silent generation, it was realistically, it's only like 5 years away from seeing that decline anyway, right? So the problem that people don't realize is what COVID did is it upped the timeline by 5 to 10 years. So all those boomers that we had been talking about leaving the workforce, they were just like, screw it, I don't need to deal with this stress, I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. You know,
Yeah.
they've done their time and they've got their investments and they're like, I don't need to handle all this
Piece it
crap
out.
and stress, so I'm out.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they've got a lot of folks that unfortunately are 85 and above, that silent generation that are, you know, just on the way out. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of them, you know, you can't do genetic modifications, which the vaccine, you know, has now been proven to be. You can't do isolation,
Yeah.
and you can't do supply chain issues and survive at a frail age.
No.
You know, that's
But,
unrealistic.
like you've got, an increase in things that are going wrong with
Yeah.
people because of all the things and because of the vaccines and this and that. And just like, I think that there's, that boom, that group of people that is
Yeah.
larger than the people below it is
Yeah.
moving through that. And then on top of that, to be perfectly honest, like, and this isn't all healthcare workers, because some of them are fantastic
Sure.
and doing a great job.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of them, to be honest, are playing it up.
Yeah.
They're contributing to the problem. Like when I was in the hospital, not this time, but the first time there, it was right after the funeral, and
Mhm.
apparently a bunch of people had called in sick on the day of the funeral. Coincidentally, they all cared about the Queen so much
Yeah.
that they called in sick. So I think there's a lot of stuff like that that's happening, and that like I don't know if it's just that like they're so fed up with the way that the system runs, and they're trying to get the things that they need, that they're making the situation worse in the hopes that by doing that they'll get the attention, or they're
Well-
just like, whatever it is. But all of these things are contributing to this, where
So
you get
I-
shit wait times.
Well, it does, but so it's interesting. My cousin is a newly minted nurse, and she's not as politically active, but she's, obviously her and I still get along really well. We just come from different places. And I think in Ontario, it's Bill 132. No, Bill 124, whatever. I think Bill 132 is a sexual harassment bill. But 124
Same thing,
maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, same thing. Essentially it put a cap on what nurses and certain healthcare could make. And she was telling me that it's more frequent than one would think to see somebody come fresh out of nursing school, go to a job, and I'm talking like, hospitals are petitioning for special licenses to get these nursing students into the hospital sooner. And to have these new nurses come in, realize that your ratio of patient to caregiver is so high that it's unrealistic to be worked insane hours, and to then also have a cap on your wage that reduces you to losing money because it's lower than inflation. I think it's 3% or it's something like 1% a year, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking like paramedics and police aren't getting those caps, just nurses. When you know that, and that is the only political activity that you're really getting into, of course, like you're not going to have people stay in a system like that. But
No.
I have been gently reminding people when they talk about it, I was like, oh, they probably shouldn't have like fired all those nurses and support staff.
Yeah. I mean, 20% is a significant amount of people. I mean, some would say it's 1/5.
Yeah.
I also keep telling people that I'm like, you chose to go in that career field, and I'm like, that is a risk you took, that something like this could happen,
Yeah.
or that whatever, that I'm like, you kind of deal with it.
Well, and
I
and
guess
from the
I just, sorry, go ahead, Gavin.
From the get-go on the whole thing, it was like, oh, they're getting danger pay and this and that and all, like, it's like, why? Like, that's you sign up for a job knowing the risks, and if they get bad, like, I'm sorry, you knew that going into it. Like, not that, again, that some of them are great people and they do fantastic work, and we definitely need these people, but also you don't all of a sudden become like a firefighter and go, wait, you actually want me to go into the building that's on fire? Like, are you crazy? I'm going to need to get paid more for that. Because like
Yeah.
most of the time you're not dealing with like the worst case scenario.
Mhm.
It just so happens that at this particular time, things got worse than they had expected, although I don't think they're as bad as everyone, well, the media let on. It was not
Yeah.
as dangerous. Certainly
But I
people
mean,
died and got sick and had some effects, but it was not like the plague just rolled through and like, oh, if you even looked at somebody that had it, you had a chance of dying, you know. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Wow.
know.
I have more respect for the people that were working at the grocery stores having to sanitize everything on
Yeah.
ship pay compared to them, compared to all the PPE protection and everything
Yeah.
that they had at the hospitals. I mean, yes, there were shortages or whatever, but I mean, in most cases, they were way more prepared for that compared to, you know, the 16-year-old that's picking up all the carts and disinfecting
Yeah.
everything so you can go do whatever. That's way more
I don't know.
I actually think
essential.
that I think I agree with that, Pierre. There was a lot of young kids that had, you know, starter jobs, whether it was a hostess
Yep.
at a restaurant or, you know, bag boy at, you know, the grocery store, cart person, right? But folks like that, they really got put on the spot. A lot of the time I would say that their employers really did a poor job of equipping them.
But I
Because
mean,
they were
it might
not
not have been
supposed to
available.
be. No, I'm not talking about equipment, but equipping them in a sense of they were the first ones that had to deal with bitchy people and
Oh,
all
yeah.
of these, you know, they were the front line
Yeah.
of that.
Why
Whereas, you
can't I
know,
go get my coffee inside,
right,
right? Like, why can I not do
absolutely,
this?
like,
And yeah, they definitely got the brunt end of a lot.
absolutely. And I did
Yeah.
feel bad. Like I was like, I'm not giving you my information, but at the same time, I always said it nicely, like, because I'm like, this 16-year-old kid doesn't have the skills in life to deal with this. So I'm not going to make them, you know, and they are getting paid like what, $12.50 an hour. So, you know, $13 an hour, like they don't deserve to have that kind of trash thrown at them. However, the healthcare system was in a deficit to begin with, and they really just all shot themselves in the foot. And now, you know, you're talking about the wait times increasing 54%. Well, they probably shouldn't have shut down what they deemed non-essential surgeries for a year or two,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Because
I
they're
mean-
like, oh, we just can't have people in the hospital. And it's like, well, that's actually not true.
Yeah.
But
You can,
you know,
and
you
you
guys,
should, yeah.
yeah, you guys for sure decided that that was a decision for you to make.
Yeah,
So,
like Mel's surgery was pushed off. She had
Yeah.
a spinal tap for hers, right? It was a like in and out surgery. I mean, they pretty much wheeled her out. Like she can't even walk because it's not like
Yep.
completely unthawed, but they're like, can you wiggle a toe? And she's like, and a toe like twitched, and they're like, cool, get the fuck out.
yep,
You know, like no breakdown on the recovery part. It was like, here's a piece of paper.
yeah,
You know, it wasn't even, it was printed all crooked, so a few of the words were missing. So I'm like, we pieced some of it together and everything. And yeah, it was just right because it was so backlogged. They got pushed for, I don't know, I think 8-9 months. And then it was like, okay, yeah, you come in, you know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't go in. I had to sit outside. And then it was like,
yeah,
okay, she's ready. And like, they pretty much like rolled the wheelchair up to the car and like kind of like jerked it, hope she fell in the car and like ran off.
yep.
Right. Like there was no help, no support or whatever. So I mean, you know,
Well,
paying for that.
that's, you know, like this may be a bit of a, well, it's not off brand for me, but that was actually my biggest complaint with religious institutions, specifically churches at large. You know, they just decided as soon as the government said, hey, you know, inside those buildings is little germies and y'all can't hang out together. Churches are actually one of the largest social infrastructures of a community. And as soon as they decided that you had to, you know, you couldn't go out and do ministry at, you know, nursing homes, do ministry at hospitals, do ministry at, you know, all this stuff, it really you really saw the decline of some of those social infrastructure things and mental health resources. Like there was groups that I know, the church that I went to, and I won't probably go back to that church, but the church that I went to, they used to do, like meals for people in the community. They used to do provide childcare for, moms that
Yep.
needed it, things like that, resources that, maybe don't seem essential, but pretty much are. And you see the same thing happen where, they just decided all of a sudden that that was of less value,
Yep.
caring for a person was of less value. And yeah, anyways, we could get sidetracked. So
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it really sounds like Kieran Moore should be worrying more about what's going on in the hospitals instead of trying to get everyone to voluntarily wear masks before he threatens to make
Yeah.
them wear masks again. But some more things with government waste. Empty park and ride dubbed useless $8 million cement playground. So a 3-year-old East Ottawa park and ride is basically a giant parking lot that has no cars in it, and it's only
Yeah.
used for recreational activities. It seems. I guess all the kids are getting together and playing foot hockey or something in there. And a big waste of their tax dollars. It's not surprising that Ottawa has gone and wasted tax dollars at some level of government, because that seems to be all they're capable of.
8.2 million for 263 parking spots. It's supposed to be like a park and ride or whatever, but I'm like, yeah, it's just
That's a lot of money. 263, like if $8 million only gets you 263 parking spaces, those seem a little overpriced.
yeah, and I mean, like knowing the area, I'm like, that's such a weird spot to have a park and
Right.
ride.
It's saying that the stop service is only 2 regular bus routes.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it's weird.
Way to go, Ottawa. Way to go. Even at the municipal level, you're shitting the bed.
well, there's so what's a park and ride? That's just the
It's basically where you
Like a bus, like a bus terminal. Like you can park
Yeah.
there, and then you hop on.
oh, okay, like a carpool type
Yeah,
Yeah.
parking lot.
but you park
Okay.
there and then take the transit into the big shitty.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty interesting because the government shut down quite a bit, I think, but didn't really pivot. They were quick to shut everything down, but didn't really pivot their planning because, we saw even in my own town, we saw them try and do like, they spent the last 2 years scaring people from going into public and then trying with every effort to get the local economy back up and running, using
Well.
things like, tourist dollars to do this, and this. I'm like, but you
Yeah.
just programmed people for the last 2 years to be afraid of the world. So,
Yeah.
I think that the park and ride kind of stuff is a reflection of the fact that people are like, screw you. We're now working from home. That's not changing. You shut us down, deal with the consequences.
Right. And in the article, they actually got like people commenting on, not on Facebook or something. Someone did the math. It's $32,318 per parking spot.
Yeah.
And I mean,
That's a lot of
Like-
money for a spot.
yeah. And I mean, like, a lot of people have been flagging out OC Transpo because of the big shitty fucking shit show it is with that LRT train. It was a disaster when it first started. I don't know if it's fixed itself, but then you couldn't get on. They shut everything down, and now they're just jacking up prices and they're cutting back. Like when it first started back up, like buses just wouldn't show up. Right? Like they're supposed to be there at, let's say, 2:00, and like you're there at 1:45 and like at 3 o'clock, you're still waiting on that bus. Like they just canceled a bunch of stuff. So I know a lot of people have been exiting them and saying get fucked. So that's probably a part, but
Crazy.
also 8.2 million for
Yeah.
this parking spot.
30
seems
30 plus
ridiculous.
grand a spot. Yeah, that's stupid. But yeah, more things that are stupid in government waste in Ottawa. Former Governor General Adrienne Clarkson still bills more than $100,000 a year in expenses. I'm guessing she built a few parking spaces. Clarkson has billed taxpayers more than 1.1 million in expenses since she left Rideau Hall in 2005. She has received another 1.6 million to date as her government pension. On top of some other things here, that does not include the 3 million in a startup grant, plus up to 7 million over 10 years to match donations from the private sector that were paid to establish the Clarkson's charitable organization, the Institute for
one?
Canadian Citizenship.
What's up with these charitable organizations that funnel into politicians' pockets?
Yeah, it's interesting, but
Oh.
apparently the pension and the startup grant are standard for outgoing governor generals. They are the only position in government that seems to have something like that. And this expense program was created in '79. So unless it was during that very brief time where, what was his name, Joe Clark was the prime minister, that would have been a Trudeau thing. Senior, not junior.
Yeah.
But apparently there's a weird thing where the governor general is allowed to bill things to like as an office expense for the rest of their life, even though they are no longer in office, and all of them seem to do this. But when you do that of $100,000 or more in a year, it has to get added as a separate line item because it's government.
Oh, so that's how this finally maybe got triggered.
So none of the, well, apparently this has been an ongoing thing. More than $100,000 in 9 of the 12 fiscal years since she left office.
I guess I'm just curious, what exactly does the governor general do?
They represent the throne.
Yeah.
And
But
they
that's
just
what-
literally said
Yeah.
that's
Okay,
as a small breakdown, that's all it is, right? The
that's
governor
pretty much
general
what I thought it
replaces the
was.
crown.
They're the
I was
rubber
like,
stamp.
Yeah,
Lately, though, they do a lot of sexual harassing and yelling at staff and stuff like
Oh.
that, which I don't think is part of their job description. That's
No,
what
that-
happens.
We'll toss that one in for free if I can write off 100,000 every year.
Yeah. And
right.
so like I kind of get like when you get one of these prestigious positions, there's some perks that kind of go along with it. And like, it said that, all of them use it, but 9 out of the 12 years, you got over $100,000 in expenses for like your office. Like you just got $3 million to do your startup. What the hell else do you need?
So here's my plan, guys. This is what I'm getting out of this, is that if we start a charitable organization and we all somehow figure out how to make it beneficial for us. So like, I'll put it in my dog's name. Like a beneficiary will be one of my dogs, and Pierre, you've got a daughter. I'm sure she could open a bank account, and Gavin, you've got pets, right?
Yes, I have several guns. Oh, yes.
And we can get some government grants that way. We can get some capital. We can get some, like capital sponsorship. We can
Just make it rain.
we could all quit our jobs and, move up north to our middle of nowhere. Our compound, and just operate as a charitable organization. We can claim it's like emotional support, something.
Yeah,
Can't
freedom from
argue with
government.
that.
So
We can't call it freedom anything, and we can't call
too
it
triggering,
government because that would be, a little too, in their eyes.
Can we call it honkers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for those that identify as birds, we need to go into a sanctuary.
Yeah. So apparently, the Governor General's office refused to answer questions about the money that's being spent or how they determine what expenses are appropriate. The executive assistant described the expense claims as a private matter, despite the fact that public money is being used on it. It is a private matter, and that they are currently on a week's long trip in Europe. So I guess I know how some of that money is being spent at the very least.
Dang.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so she's been gone 12 years, almost $1.1 million has been
So-
written off in expenses
Yeah.
since she left.
So something interesting that, I'm just hearing stuff about the royal family because of obviously the changes that have occurred.
Yeah.
And I'm all about like a certain amount of tradition and,
Yeah.
ceremony and that sort of thing. I'm really fine with it. So in my mind, if the governor general was doing things that represented, even if it was just like, I'm a public image going and representing Canada to, whether it's a different country. I know that, or I've heard that, the royals, they get a salary if they are working royals,
Yes.
right? For lack of a better word.
Yeah, and
So
they
in-
own investments and land and all of these
Well,
things.
absolutely, but they get an extra salary if they're actually going
and doing something.
and doing things as a representative of the crown. So if these former governor generals are taking money from the Commonwealth, they should be required to be representing
They should be
the
doing
Commonwealth,
something for it.
like, so you send folks like that to,
Yeah.
I guess interact with different leaders of the world and go to those conferences and be those representatives. I don't have a problem with that if that's what was happening.
But they're doing something with it. This one,
Absolutely.
they're retired. They're not doing anything anymore, and they're
Except
still
touring
spending all-
Europe.
and still spending all
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not as a representative of the Commonwealth. And that's the problem. I don't have
Yeah.
an issue. I don't have an issue with the pomp and circumstance. And that's
No,
maybe why I'm like, oh, the governor general, like,
well,
I guess that
exactly.
doesn't bother me that much. It is a bit of a tradition. It is a bit of a,
Yeah, and
you know.
I
It's,
agree.
it's a
I know-
useless tradition we should get rid of. 100%.
well,
Like, there is no reason you should be able to fucking get to write off $100,000. You are no longer in that position.
but
You
that's,
do not.
Well,
Like,
but
I
so
don't
that's the
disagree with
difference.
that. I
Yeah.
don't disagree with that. But like I was saying, if you are collecting expenses, if you are collecting money, once you've retired, that's outside of, like a pensionable thing. If you're
You
doing
should
that,
be
you
res-
better be working as a representative of Canada,
Yeah,
and
while-
whether that means that oh, hey, you're the governor general, you're specific to maybe your background makes it specific that
Yeah.
you're going to take over some of the indigenous issues,
Well, exactly.
where
If
you're
you
going to
look
go
at,
around and like work on that as a representative of
Yeah.
the Canadian
Right.
people and government, right?
yeah, so you
Yeah,
get
like when
another
there's been a
position.
bunch of
Yeah, once you're
American
out of the
presidents
position,
that
though.
after the president has
Yeah.
left the position, they've gone and done a bunch of, talks and this and that to mediate this and that. So they're still working. They're not in
Yeah,
their position of prestige, but they are still have some clout and the relationships and everything. So yeah, if the
Yeah.
person was still doing that, then for the
Absolutely.
portion of time that they are performing a duty for the country, then yes, absolutely, those should be billed at the country's expense if they're working, but not just because they feel like it.
well,
And there's
Yeah.
you should not be out of this country doing any of those talks.
Well,
Because that
that's
position,
fine.
it's
If
completely
they-
useless. Like you want to go around and talk to schools,
No,
kids
if-
that are
if
just
they
learning
go-
about all that.
Like if there's an economic conference going
Yeah.
on somewhere or something like that where they are going as an ambassador of some sort to Canada for Canada to another country.
Well,
Then-
maybe we should send the person that's actually in that fucking seat. Like, we're
Well,
already paying them.
yes, I
Yeah,
don't
but-
disagree with you, but sometimes you send a bunch of people or whatever it is, and I'm not saying this is like an ongoing thing because then that would be a full-time job, but like if it happens to relate specifically to the position that they held and the people that they knew, and they are performing some sort of a duty, then the expenses incurred during that travel should be covered by the country. That's an easy thing, but
well,
I mean, here they're saying that in 2011, they answered 200 letters you know, and 20 to 30 requests to speak a month. So like, if you break that down, so like 6.5 letters, 7 letters a day,
It's
not a
like
lot.
less than $20.
that's
And
not
that's
a
on
lot,
fancy paper.
right? Like that's not a lot,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
you
and
know,
I mean,
but that's why they're
There's-
using to justify some of these
Yeah.
expenses.
well, and I think that, you know, I believe in tradition. I believe in, you know, a certain
Yeah.
amount of ceremony. I think ceremony has its place. And whether that's just, you know, a rallying point, you know, we look at Queen Elizabeth, for example, a lot of people have different opposing views on her. However, you know, she was a figurehead for a very long time that people came to love and adore because she, even though she, you know, like she wasn't running the country, she was the figurehead of a whole,
Yeah.
you know, cultural, you know, representation, and she did it with a lot of grace, you know. I mean, I may not agree with like quite a bit of the stuff that goes on in most monarchies, but you know, you can respect a little bit of a unifying force that folks like that can bring forward. And I just think that governor generals in Canada, for the most part, are not doing that as a job. They're not being a good figurehead. They're not being a good representation. And I mean, I don't think that they do anything more than just for image sake sign royal assent. You know, like once it gets to that point, they're signing it. There's there's nothing to stop it, right? Like,
yeah, and maybe in years gone past, the governor general had more to do, but here it is basically a symbolic thing.
Absolutely, it's a symbolic thing.
So
then make it a good one. Make it a good one. But on that side too, if we're talking about expenses, like we have a lack of fiscal responsibility on a good day. And so things like, when I think about it this way,
and that's for people that are actually still in their roles, that are doing a job, let alone that are retired and have been for quite a while.
Well, when I think about it this way, I look at it and I'm like, why is that individual expensing anything? You know, like if they're doing something on behalf of the country, you know, the government should be putting them on you know, a budget friendly plane to get them where they need to go.
No, I have a better idea. If we're gonna do something, let the government pay for it right off the get-go. You don't get to submit receipts.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like the government chooses your mode of transportation. The government chooses, oh, hey, you get this much money to spend for, you know, meals or stays or whatever, you know, like that sort of thing.
Right? And I get, like,
but I mean,
so we've got the corporate jet, or the Dominion of Canada jet, and there's enough people going that it makes it cheaper for us to fly our own jet there. Oh, it's just you going? Okay. No. So then we're going to put you on something that's a little bit more, and like
Porter.
Swoop for you, bro.
Right. But I mean,
and again,
just things like that.
And when you're
that
actually in the position and being active in the position, then you get a little bit more leeway on some things, and maybe you get to fly on the nicer one. But if you're not in the role anymore and you're still doing things, maybe you get like not first class, right? Like, you know,
it's true.
You don't get to have 60 bottles of wine and how many beers on a 3-hour flight.
You only get one glass.
Or
and a bag of non-peanuts peanuts.
Or
peanut-free peanuts. Peanut-free peanuts.
Peanut-free peanuts.
Well, one last one here from La Belle Provence. Quebec police seize weapons, cash, drugs at routine accident stop.
That is a mind-blowing article.
Yeah, but they took out the funny part.
I know. We'll do the funny part, because that's really the only reason I included this. But you know, I guess somewhere in Quebec, in Laval, got called to a minor highway accident that resulted in 2 arrests as they discovered weapons, cash, and drugs. So
they were like impaired too, these 2 kids, right?
21-year-old, 23. They both
blew over.
They responded to an accident on highway 640 west near highway 15, and wherever that is. They found one vehicle that had gone off the road and another that was stopped in the wrong direction on the highway exit ramp. So 21-year-old driver in the exit told them he'd been coming to the aid of the 23-year-old driver who had gone off the road. Both men took breathalyzer tests and were then arrested for impaired driving. After searching their vehicles, police seized the following items: 2 airsoft weapons, a BB gun with ammunition, 2 knives, 1 a prohibited weapon, more than $2,600 in Canadian cash, 100 counterfeit US $100 bills, 35 cannabis vaping cartridges, 200 grams of cannabis, and 4 grams of cocaine.
That's a lot.
That's just
Yeah.
one hell of a weekend in Montreal, man.
Yeah, so I'm guessing the one of the knives was a switchblade or a butterfly knife or something. But the funny part that they have removed from the article was for the BB gun with ammunition. Originally, the article had said a BB gun with armor-piercing ammunition.
I don't know who's writing these, because the part that blows my mind is that I'm like, these are people that carry firearms legally.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if your body armor doesn't even stop a pellet gun, you should maybe talk to the manufacturer of your body armor, because it's just not doing a very good job.
yeah, I know. Yeah, no. When we saw that article and then I saw it in the show notes and I opened it up and I was like, no way. I was like, they took the funny out. Cause yeah, it was
Yeah.
armor piercing BB gun ammo. I was like, man, they've upgraded since that Red Ryder lever action BB gun I wanted as a
Yeah.
kid, right?
Yeah.
It's funny that it's a BB gun with ammunition. It's like, oh, so the little pellets or ball bearings that come with it. Like, I wouldn't really call that ammunition. Like, did they have the little plastic pellets that went with the airsoft guns? Because where's the ammunition for those? I mean, obviously
Yeah.
these guys are not good guys, and they get, deserve everything that's coming to them, and probably more, because our courts will let them off with like a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
But maybe
Good thing they weren't honking
these
the horns. They
guys,
probably get more time in jail.
yeah, maybe these guys are the problem and not, legal law-abiding gun owners. It's
Yeah.
shitbags.
I've never
that
been
are
pulled over.
selling drugs.
the-
Yeah,
I've never been pulled over on the wrong side of the highway, blow over, and
yeah.
had armor piercing BBs in my possession.
One would think if you are a criminal, and I'm not trying to give criminals advice here. So if you're a criminal and you're listening, please ignore this. But maybe if you're planning to travel with some sort of illegal weapon of any kind and a bunch of illegal drugs, maybe don't partake in the alcohol or the drugs prior to transporting them,
Yeah.
so that your odds
Yeah.
of an accident are a lot less.
But
Because I
you know
imagine if
what?
they didn't blow over, they wouldn't have searched them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just saying.
yeah. You know what I think though, and like this is a pretty controversial thought, but I think that the past couple of years has really like screwed with people. So, kids that maybe just were a little rebellious are now maybe a little empowered to be really rebellious and do whatever they want, not follow the rules. And
Yeah.
you can
When-
kind of
when you
get
don't-
little shitheads like that.
Yeah, well, when you're
do
not allowed
stupid
to
things.
discipline, when you're not allowed
Yeah.
to discipline, and I'm not saying you should beat people or whatever, but like,
Some people you
at a
should.
younger,
Yeah,
no, I
absolutely.
don't disagree. There's some scenarios for that, but when you're not,
Yeah.
when you don't have the opportunity to enforce,
Yeah.
the rules of like, when you screw up, consequences happen.
Yeah.
Everyone
When
gets
you
a
can't even raise your
participation badge.
voice to your child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't put them on a timeout in their room because you can't turn their room into a negative space.
Yeah.
This like and like I am dead serious,
Oh,
right?
I know. I
Like-
know. I just
Yeah.
chuckle
Like-
about it because I'm like,
That's all right. I will
somebody
turn
wants
it
to
in.
challenge
I'll
me
turn
about
it into
negative
a
space.
positive space where I positively put boot to ass.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say
right.
I
So-
identify as a positive emotional response to this negative situation.
Yeah.
You think nowadays you could take the door off the hinges? Just be like you lose the access to having a door in your room.
Oh
Did that
yeah.
ever happen to you? right? Like,
Yes.
could
We're
you
doing
imagine
this so
now?
that the positivity can flow into the room and there's no disruption.
Yeah, as long as it's framed in and make sure that you're wearing, like essential oils and a big like your
Oh,
wife is
yeah.
wearing a big like tent dress when, social services shows up, just flow the hippie vibe and,
Yeah.
just start
Hey, man.
chanting about chakras and stuff and it'll be
These
fun.
lavender oils are lit and they will make that child calm down. Don't you worry.
Yeah. You know the verbiage. You got this, man.
Yeah. So, so that's half the problem, right? Because I mean, we're talking, this has been an ongoing problem for how many years? And I mean, 21-year-old and a 23-year-old. So I mean, let's say 7, 8 years ago, these were 15,
Yeah.
16-year-olds.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
and
that's a whole other topic that I really don't want recorded, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, on that note, we should probably bring this episode to a close. So I will remind everybody about book club. That's a thing that we do.
Yes.
October's book is The Moon is a Bitter Cunt. Sorry, is it Harsh Mistress by Robert Heinlein. Excellent book. I really enjoyed this one. I
Yep.
definitely need some sort of supercomputer as a friend. November's book, A Soldier First by Rick Hillier. I would say that we're on Discord, but apparently we are not on Discord anymore, or we still are, but we're making the move over to Gilded, whatever that is. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, no, Discord's blocked. So it's been
Oh, there you go.
deactivated, but you can download whatever.
Sorry,
The new
What?
thing.
Go to
The new
Discord.
thing.
Yeah,
Well, there you
yeah,
go.
the new thing.
A new
Yeah, go to the
platform
new
for
one.
me to ignore everybody on. Excellent.
I was
If
gonna
An-
say
yeah.
I don't use Discord, but okay.
Yeah, if Andrew was here, he would tell you to go to ragnaroktactical.ca, use the code Patriot at checkout to take food out of his child's mouth, and then also remind you that the books and all of the things, you can use our affiliate link on Amazon to take a little bit of Jeff Bezos's penis rocket away from him and put it back into food for Andrew's kid's mouth. Not the penis thing, the food thing. But yeah, Pierre, where can they find you on the internet?
Off the wall customizing at Gmail, Tickety Talk, Instagram, other things. We'll be on Gilded from once in a while. That's about it.
Liz?
Well, you can find me at the Basement Death Squad, on Instagram and Facebook. So if anybody wants to come out and learn some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you happen to be in Southwestern Ontario, yeah, we'd love to have you come out.
Awesome. You can find me on Instagram at urbexgta. And apologies to Rod Giltaca. I guess him and Andrew got their wires crossed or something, and they might be somewhere else doing something. I don't know. I'm not sure. I didn't get that memo, but neither of them are here. So, I guess a reminder that you were all